Hi all, it's Vanessa Love. This is my channel about the mental health field and related topics. Alright, so this is the fourth installment of this video, so reflections on working in a psych hospital. It took some time to get around to this topic specifically because in kind of remembering everything, there's so many things that I just kind of moved on from. Once I closed the chapter and went into private practice, I actually didn't keep in contact with many people from my department, but many people from like the nursing department or nurses department, like they have kept up with me, and I actually I think that they're just such wonderful people, and I'm so glad that they remember me, that they want to connect. And even when I started private practice and was like, done with that chapter, never mind, none of the other people in my department re-added me. Almost everyone who I was friends with in other departments had added me, which is again one of those things, if you've watched some of these other videos, that I have said I didn't belong there. And so I want to talk about my mindset at that time. And my mindset at that time was, if I work enough, if I show up and I'm here and I'm learning and I'm changing, then there's no other thing for me to really do other than grow in this company. However, what I really want to emphasize here is that when it's the wrong place for you, it's the wrong place for you. You can work as much as possible. You can try and gain, like any momentum, and you will never be good enough for that place. So when I said why I left was underneath it all, I didn't belong there, I mean it. There was no way for me in the place where I was mentally and just in my life and in my career at that time to really gain enough in that hospital. Maybe now things are different, but I also wouldn't go back to a hospital. It's not one of those, it's not a place for me. One of the things that was really difficult for me to talk about, and that I want to tell you about, but I also want to give it the heaviness that it deserves, because I like to be a bubbly person. I like to be outgoing and, all of this stuff. And at that time in my life, I was very, very closed in. Anything that I actually posted on social media was just about dreams I had. Nothing about how miserable I was in school, nothing about how miserable I was at my job. I think a couple of times it's moving, that's it. Nothing else. So I think for a lot of people this might be a surprise for them, because I don't think that if they knew, they didn't know the full story. So, this is not great, and for me, I'm just hoping that you see the reason, I think, why I just stopped working so hard. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that don't be a workhorse. Work at work, leave it there. That's it. That was the best advice that I got from my assistant manager there, and I still think work at work, leave it there. Before I came in on one Sunday morning for my shift, one of my coworkers in the nursing staff had passed away. He was working 16-hour days. He had diabetes. He was not taking care of himself. And one of the teenagers had some issue in the middle of the night, not really sure what happened. They were trying to calm her down or do whatever they needed to do, and something happened to him, and I guess he pretty much flatlined there, and in the presence of all of his overnight coworkers and in front of some of the teenagers. So the staff not getting the support that they need, they didn't get any support around this. I remember nearly telling one of the nursing staff to just go home, because like, first of all, they have to pull in people now to cover his shifts, which they don't, like, this is one of those things that I want to emphasize. They don't care. They don't care. You know, I don't know what personal, like, things that they might have done for him. I know that they did have a memorial at the hospital, which I'm so glad that I didn't go to, because he had a twin brother who showed up, which I'm like, oh God, that sounds like the most terrible thing to be like, oh, okay, so we're wait, who is this? Wait, what? You know, I didn't know much about this person, but I do, like, I worked with them quite often, and there was a lot to this. So the coworker, she came in, and she was just like, okay. Now, had I had any power in that place, I would have said, go home. Go home, go home, go home, go home. Because you are not making me feel safe, and I don't want you to be here while you've been crying all day. Like, clearly you are not okay. You are in the middle of grief. Go home. Of course, they didn't pay enough for anyone to really be able to do that, and any of the superiors that they respected actually had, like, quit at that time. I definitely know that. There was this one nurse who had, like, everyone, like, she was very knowledgeable and she kept everyone in line, and they respected her so much that they've said, like, oh, I called up and tried to call out, and she picked up the phone, and I just hung up and came in. She had left at that point. And, like, I don't remember how many years ago this was, so I'm like, this could be 10 years ago. Could be 9 years ago. It's, like, just one of those, like, maybe I can find in my artwork somewhere that this had happened. If I have to go through all my journals, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, so they didn't get any, like, proper support about that. The hospital did have the memorial. Of course, they had to pull someone in. And the other thing is that I really, really disagreed with in this whole situation was that they, the way that, like, I don't think that they should have told the kids. The kids were only there for a short period of time, and most of them, like, especially the ones who are witness to this, were doing well. Like, they were just about to be, like, not dismissed, but discharged. There we go. They were just about to be discharged. They didn't have to know, in my opinion, but, okay, so this is a Sunday. So, on-call doctor, on-call nurse. These are not the regular 9-to-5 people. They are not the ones who work with these people all the time, or, like, this population with the clients who were there at the time. They weren't working with them on a regular basis. So, I don't even know if they really had done much psych nurse, like, supervision practice, like, practicing that type of stuff. So, my assistant manager worked with me on Sundays, and she said, oh, well, they just kind of came in, said he died, and that was that. And the other fallout from this is that the clients at that time hated me. It just was one of those things. It was just a big struggle. If I didn't scream in my car on the way home from work every night, then I guess I had a decent day. But those were few and far between at this time. And so yes, it was very difficult, and now this person who was very nice and very giving, and, you know, who probably, I mean, who definitely spent more time with them and had more of a relationship with them, they would say things like, why do some people have to die? And then give me the side eye, like, you know, like, apparently I'm supposed to die because they don't like me, but, you know, this coworker was supposed to live forever, which would be nice. would have definitely had been nice if he had lived forever. However, he wasn't taking care of himself, and whatever other issues were going on within him and his life, that's what probably the issue was. So, it just, I don't think the hospital dealt with it well. I don't think that the staff dealt with it well. It's just one of those shit show, just crapshoots of a situation, and it's so tough because there's never been a situation like that in my life before or after. It's this weird experience that I'm like, did I tell anyone? I feel like I would now have probably mentioned it to, school and internship, but I'm guessing at that point I did not. Just because of the way that either school was, because I was working on my thesis for quite some time and had like one class. So I'm like, it could very possibly be that it was during that time. But yeah, it was not a good situation, and I really wish that things were dealt with in a better way, like having support for the staff, like kind of keeping the staff who had witnessed this away from work for a couple of days. Like that seems like, I know you can't use FMLA for that, but feels like that should have been an option. I know that it might have been that time either before or after where they changed our sick days to just PTO. So I'm like, maybe they didn't have enough PTO or whatever, but something has to give in that situation. And so receiving support, having better, like, just deliverance to people. To my knowledge, there was no like, like some people pass away, and it just so happened that this person passed away, and that type of stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot, and just I wish things were different, and it definitely wasn't. And what could have been a bad situation, I think, was made worse. I feel like in my situation, I did grieve in my own way. I know that I talked to my supervisor and my assistant manager about it, and just kind of some of the symptoms that I was having, because like when I get super stressed, like I start, like my spirituality like ramps up for no reason, and then it's like, oh, I see like weird reflections and all sorts of things that I'm like, normally I don't see those things. So like that had ramped up, and just a couple of other things. I think also at that point I was probably seeing a therapist, so I probably hopefully did mention it to her. Like, love to see those notes. What was going on with that. So that's a situation that it's taken me a while to kind of get to the point where I could give it the serious tone that I think it needed, and also criticize the situation by the way it was handled. Of course, like, my coworker, it was just one of those fluke things, and I wish that he took better care of himself, but maybe when your time comes and his time was up. And I hope in some way that he knew that, and that it was actually a peaceful transition instead of this chaos that was left. Alright, well, thanks for watching, and I will talk with you guys soon.